Hi Coates Stars, I'm Mrs. Puckett. I'm the reading specialist at Coates Elementary School. Today I'd like to talk to 5th grade parents and also parents of students reading on a 5th grade level. In 5th grade, your student comes in reading very complex stories. So if you don't mind referring to your reading routines at home for 5th graders, please turn to the second page and you'll see an example from the book Poppy of what kids are reading when they enter 5th grade. Now you'll notice that the characters are complex, the events are complex, and these stories have a lot that the child has to remember. So it's not quite so simple and straightforward as the reading they were doing in 4th grade and below. Now, if you want to find some books that are level S, there's a website on here for Goodreads, and you can find lots of great titles. Most of them are going to be novels or chapter books. Many of them will be nonfiction text. This is also a good time to get your child into magazines. So if they're interested in something, have them follow up on a magazine or follow a blog about something that they're interested in. At the end of 5th grade, your child will be reading a level 50, which is a level U. Now, at that point, you're going to notice that the print gets smaller, and one thing that we'll notice at this level is there's a lot more historical fiction. So students are going to have to be able to kind of adjust their thinking into another time period. I'll often have students say, well, that's not fair that that girl couldn't grow up to be a doctor. And it's like, it's not about being fair. It's about what times were like then. So they have to be able to put their mindset into a different time period or a different country or even a different state. And so that's going to show some flexibility in their thinking. If your child's already reading on this level, please just keep encouraging them to read, and you're welcome to watch the 6th grade video. Now, I'd like you to watch Mrs. Buck. She's our math specialist, but she has a son in the 5th grade. And so if you'll take a few minutes to watch Mrs. Buck and her son talk about a book that he's reading, then when we come back, I'll talk about some of the reading strategies she did. All right, let's hear it for the math teacher.
Hey Jake, what are you reading?
I'm reading Allies.
Allies? Let's see what that book is. Oh, what genre is this book, Allies?
I think it's realistic fiction. Historic fiction.
It's historical fiction because it happened about something that happened in the past, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about the book.
So basically, there's this man named D, and he's on one of the boats to go, it's about D-Day, so D is one of the main characters, and he's on one of the boats, and he's trying to storm, the beaches, and he's with his friend, Sam, Sid, and they're together. And then there's also a girl that's French, and her mom's on the resistance.
So wait, she's on the opposite side?
No, she's French.
Oh.
She's inland, and her mom got taken away because she was a resistant, so she went to go find the resistant, and now she's helping out with the resistance. And then there's also James, who is a paraglider, paratrooper, and he has to jump out of a plane. And then there's also Henry, which is black, and there was segregation during World War II, and he was a medic and he was helping people.
So do these 4 characters all work together in the story?
Some do. Some meet up and some don't.
So as you're reading it, are they separate stories as you read it of all 4 of them?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like to read historical fiction sometimes too, but right now I'm reading an informational text. I like informational too, especially with my job. I gotta read a lot of math books.
Cool.
Yeah, so can you tell me, Jake, if you were in the story, what would your next steps be?
Towards the end of the book, most of them met up in a city, and they were just waiting there until more people got back. But my next step would probably be to go storm the German capital, the Nazis' capital.
Cool. Did you find as you were reading that any of the characters were changing throughout the story as you read it?
Yeah. So Sarah, so when she started off, she was kind of scared because she saw her mom get taken away, and but after that she stood up and got more brave when the story kept on going on and on.
Cool. And we find that we can all change too, right?
Yep.
Awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you're reading and see that you're reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Buck and Jake. That was great. Now, what you'll notice they did is Jake was reading a book on his own. Fifth graders want to read silently. They still like you to read to them sometimes. And if your fifth graders having trouble getting into a book, it's often very helpful if you read the first chapter to them. That way they kind of hear the voices in their head, it sets the tone, and then they can go off and read on their own. That's a great strategy if your child's having trouble getting into the book. But as we saw, Jake was very into that book. And so what Mrs. Buck did is she allowed Jake to take his time and discuss the book on his level. And that's what we want you to do. So just start with simple questions. What's the book about? Who's in the book? And then we'll notice that Mrs. Buck referred to page 4 of our reading routines at home. On the bottom, there are some more questions. And this is where you get your child thinking about higher level questions. If you were in the story, what would you do? So at the beginning, he was just reciting what had happened. And anyone can do that at 5th grade. But what all 5th graders need to learn to do is put themselves in someone else's shoes. Make assumptions. The book didn't tell you this, but how would it be different if you were there? How would it be different if this character was in that scene? So you're really trying in 5th grade to push your child to see things from another perspective. As your child goes through 5th grade, they're going to learn about a storyline or a story mountain. That's not something that we expect parents to know, but as the year goes on, you might ask your child, hey, could you draw the plot of this story on a story mountain the way your teacher would ask you to? And then it's a good thing for them to reinforce. Also, every good story, something causes a character to change. That's usually what leads to the character learning something and changing something in their personality. And that's usually what leads us to finding the author's message. So no matter what book it is, if it's a good book, those main characters are going to change. So even if you haven't read the book, so you don't feel like you can talk with your child, then ask them, how did the characters change? What made them change? If you had been there, would that have caused you to change the same way? So these are some good ways to get started talking to your child about their reading. And by talking to them and engaging them and showing them that even though they're not a little kid anymore, you still care about what they're reading, that will encourage your 5th grader to be ready for 6th grade. All right, I'll be talking to you again later. Enjoy and keep reading. Bye-bye.